I gave my son a $300,000 Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon for his 40th birthday. My daughter-in-law raised her glass of French champagne in front of 200 guests and said with a mocking smile, "A toast to the foolish mother who tries to buy love like day-old bread." The entire ballroom erupted in laughter. Nervous laughs from some people who still had a shred of decency left. Cruel, vicious cackles from others who had been waiting for this moment all night long. I just smiled, a small, knowing smile that nobody understood at the time. Then, I took off my expensive black heels, left them right there on the Italian marble stage, and walked out barefoot without saying a single word. My navy blue dress swept the polished floor behind me, trailing like a queen's robe. But what I did after that night, what I had been planning for 5 long years, she will never, ever forget. If you had seen me 6 months ago, standing in the middle of that glittering ballroom with 200 pairs of judgmental eyes staring at me with a mixture of pity and schadenfreude, you would have thought I was the most pathetic woman in the world. The foolish old mother desperately trying to buy her son's love with extravagant gifts she could barely afford. And maybe, just maybe, you would have been right to think that. There I was, Margaret Louise Anderson, 67 years old, with my carefully styled silver hair that had taken 3 hours at the salon, wearing my navy blue Chanel dress that I had bought especially for that night and had cost me $2,000, holding the keys to a brand new black Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon worth exactly $300,000, while my daughter-in-law Veronica lifted her crystal glass filled with Dom Perignon champagne that cost $250 per bottle. "A toast!" Veronica shouted across the Emperor Ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, her voice cutting sharply through the classical music. Her voice had that perfectly modulated tone she had spent thousands of dollars perfecting in private acting classes that never led to the career she dreamed about. "A toast to the foolish mother who tries to buy love like day-old bread from a discount bakery." The ballroom, decorated with $50,000 worth of imported orchids and roses, exploded in laughter. Some guests tried to hide their amusement behind their napkins or wine glasses, but most didn't even bother to pretend. They laughed openly, cruelly, enjoying my public humiliation as their main entertainment for the evening. My son David looked down at his untouched plate of $200 filet mignon, his jaw clenched. His fists tightened around his sterling silver fork and knife, but he said absolutely nothing in my defense. Not one single word. He never said anything when she spoke. He had stopped defending me 3 years ago, right around the time Veronica convinced him that I was the problem in his life, the anchor holding him back from becoming the man he was meant to be. Do you know what it feels like when 200 pairs of eyes pierce you with pity mixed with contempt? When 200 people who you invited, who you paid for their dinner and drinks and entertainment, look at you with disdain. It's like someone is slowly peeling your skin off in thin strips, layer by agonizing layer, while you stand there and smile because showing pain would only make it worse. The 12-piece mariachi band I had personally hired for $15,000 stopped playing mid-song, their instruments falling silent as they watched the drama unfold. The enormous bouquets of Dutch tulips imported specifically for this event seemed to wilt and die with my humiliation. Even the giant red satin bow I had lovingly placed on top of the Mercedes-Benz seemed to mock me, a cruel reminder of my carefully laid plan. But I just smiled, a small smile, barely moving my lips, almost imperceptible to anyone who wasn't looking directly at my face. I set down my own untouched glass of champagne. I reached down and unbuckled my $300 black Louboutin heels. The ones with the iconic red soles that Veronica had once commented made me look like I was trying too hard to be young. I took them off slowly, deliberately, and left them sitting right there on the raised marble stage next to the microphone stand. Then I walked barefoot across the cold Italian marble floor, my navy blue dress trailing behind me gracefully, heading toward the massive gold-framed exit doors at the back of the ballroom. I didn't say a word. Not one single solitary word to anyone. Not to my son, not to my daughter-in-law, not to the 200 guests who were now whispering and pointing at the crazy old woman walking out of her own party barefoot. Veronica kept laughing, kept raising her glass, kept celebrating what she thought was her ultimate victory over the mother-in-law she had despised from the moment they met. My son David kept his eyes fixed on that expensive steak on his plate, too ashamed to look up, too weak to stand up for me, too controlled by his wife to remember who had actually raised him. The guests whispered behind their hands and pulled out their phones to record this moment for their social media followers. But not one of them, absolutely not one single person in that room, imagined what I had already been planning and preparing at that exact moment for the past 5 years. You see, when you've built an empire from literally nothing, starting with just $10 and a basket of homemade bread, when you've survived the sudden death of your husband at 27 years old with an 8-year-old son to raise alone, when you've worked 18-hour days kneading bread dough at 3 in the morning just to pay rent on a moldy apartment, you learn something crucial about survival. You learn that silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is not acceptance of defeat. Silence is the most powerful, most dangerous weapon that exists in this world. That night, while everyone in that ballroom celebrated my public humiliation and drank expensive champagne that I had paid for with my own hard-earned money, while they laughed at the foolish old woman who didn't know her place, I had already made my final decision. Veronica Martinez Anderson was going to learn the true meaning of losing absolutely everything, not in one day, not in one dramatic moment, but slowly, methodically, piece by careful piece, until she had nothing left but ashes and the bitter taste of her own arrogance. The Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon was still gleaming under the bright spotlight when I walked past it on my way out. $300,000 in matte black perfection with custom leather interior and every luxury feature available. $300,000 that everyone in that room thought I had foolishly wasted in a desperate, pathetic attempt to buy back my son's love. $300,000 that made me look senile and out of touch with reality. How completely, utterly wrong they all were. That truck wasn't a gift. It had never been a gift. It was bait. Carefully chosen, strategically purchased, perfectly presented bait. And Veronica, in her infinite arrogance and absolute certainty of her own cleverness, had bitten down on that hook so hard that she would never, ever be able to let go or escape what was coming. My name is Margaret Louise Anderson. I am 67 years old. I was born in a rundown apartment in Queens, New York. I've been a widow for 40 years. I own 22 bakeries across New York City and New Jersey that generate over $30 million in revenue every single year. And this is the story of how I completely destroyed the woman who tried to destroy me and my son. But for you to truly understand the magnitude of what I did, the intricate planning that went into every single detail, the patience it required to wait 5 long years for the perfect moment, I need to tell you everything from the very beginning. From the day that beautiful, charming Viper first entered my life with her designer heels and practiced tears and elaborate lies. Because what nobody knew that night at the Ritz-Carlton, what not even my own son suspected or imagined, was that I had been secretly recording every single conversation for 5 years, documenting every single lie she told, photographing every single document she forged, preparing every single move 20 steps ahead. The $300,000 truck was just the bait, the final piece of evidence I needed. The real show, the devastating revelation that would destroy her completely, was about to begin. And if you think you know how this story ends, if you think you can predict what happens next, I promise you, you're absolutely wrong. But before I tell you how it all ended, before I reveal what happened to Veronica and where she is now, you need to understand how it all began. How a poor widow selling homemade sweet bread at a farmer's market ended up owning 22 successful bakeries worth millions of dollars. And how her only son, her pride and joy, her entire reason for living and working so hard for 40 years, ended up married to a woman who was literally the devil dressed in Versace and lies. My name is Margaret Louise Anderson, but everyone who knew me back in those early difficult days called me Maggie. I wasn't born with money or privilege or any kind of advantage in life. I wasn't born with hope, to be perfectly honest with you. My father, Robert James Thompson, was a construction worker in Queens, New York, who made $32,000 a year doing backbreaking labor in all kinds of weather. My mother, Dorothy Marie Thompson, cleaned houses for wealthy families in Manhattan 6 days every single week. earning maybe $15,000 a year if she was lucky, and the families were generous with Christmas bonuses. We were 5 children crammed into 2 small bedrooms in a 4th-floor walk-up apartment with no elevator. We shared shoes to go to school because we couldn't afford 5 pairs. We ate beans with salt and day-old bread when there was food in the house, and when there wasn't any food, well, we drank water with a little salt in it to trick our stomachs into feeling less empty. I married William Robert Anderson when I was 19 years old and working as a cashier at a grocery store making minimum wage. He was 24, a site supervisor for a construction company, earning $38,000 a year, which seemed like a fortune to me at the time. To a girl who had grown up sharing shoes and eating salt water for dinner, William was a prince, a knight in shining armor, my ticket to a better life. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a slightly better part of Queens. The walls had black mold growing in the corners. The ceiling leaked brown water when it rained hard. The radiator only worked properly about half the winter, leaving us freezing the other half, but it was ours. Our first home together, our fresh start, our chance to build something better than what we had grown up with. David William Anderson was born in that cramped apartment on a hot, humid September 15th, while fireworks for Independence Day were exploding and lighting up the sky all across New York City. I held my newborn baby boy in my arms in that moldy apartment while the entire neighborhood celebrated with fireworks and barbecues and music, and I made him a solemn promise right then and there, a promise I have never broken. I promised him that he would have a better life than I did, that he would never know the gnawing pain of real hunger, that he would never wear shoes with holes in them or clothes with patches on the patches, that he would go to a good college and get a real education, that he would be somebody important, somebody respected, somebody who mattered in this world. William died when I was just 27 years old, and David was only 8 years old. It was a Tuesday morning in March, cold and gray and miserable. A scaffolding collapsed at a construction site in Manhattan, they told me later. He fell 8 floors, bouncing off metal bars and concrete all the way down. He was dead before the ambulance arrived at the scene. The construction company sent their lawyer to our apartment 3 days after the funeral. He handed me a check for $50,000 and a legal document releasing them from all liability. $50,000 for my husband's life. $50,000 for taking away David's father. It wasn't even enough money to pay for a decent funeral and cover our rent for a year. That night, after the lawyer left and I deposited that blood money check, I sat alone in the bed that still smelled like William's aftershave with my 8-year-old son sleeping in the next room, and I made the second most important decision of my entire life. The first decision was marrying William. This second decision would define everything that came after. My grandmother, Elizabeth Marie Thompson, had taught me how to make bread when I was a little girl growing up in her small apartment in Brooklyn. She taught me on Sundays after church, showing me how to knead the dough just right, how to let it rise in a warm spot, how to know exactly when it was ready for the oven. Bread making was the only real skill I had besides ringing up groceries at a cash register and crying. I was very good at crying, but crying didn't pay rent or put food on the table for my son. I started selling croissants and cinnamon rolls and cheese danishes from a large wicker basket outside the Union Square subway station. I woke up at 2 o'clock every single morning in the dark. I kneaded dough until 5 o'clock while David slept. I borrowed my neighbor Mrs. Chen's oven and paid her $20 per day to use it. By 7 in the morning, I was standing on my corner with my basket full of still warm pastries, shouting until my voice went hoarse. Fresh bread! Get your fresh homemade bread right here, still warm from the oven. Best bread in New York City. David came with me every morning before school. He was only 8 years old, small for his age, with his father's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. He helped me shout at commuters rushing past. My mom makes the best bread. Try some. You won't regret it. Do you know how many times the police chased us away from that corner? At least 3 times every week. Do you know how many times I had to slip a $5 bill or a $10 bill to a police officer just so they wouldn't confiscate my basket and fine me for operating without a vendor's license? So many times I lost count, but I kept going back. I always went back to that corner the very next morning because I had made a promise to my 8-year-old son, and I absolutely do not break my promises. Ever. One cold Tuesday morning in November, after I'd been selling bread on that corner for 9 months straight without missing a single day, a well-dressed man in an expensive gray suit stopped at my basket. His name was Thomas Sullivan, I would learn later. He owned 3 small coffee shops scattered across Manhattan and Brooklyn. He bought one of my cheese croissants for $3 and took a bite right there on the sidewalk while I watched nervously, hoping he would like it, praying he wouldn't complain or demand his money back. His eyes lit up with delight, genuine appreciation for good food. He bought 6 more croissants immediately, eating 2 more right there and taking 4 with him. He came back the next day, and the next, and the one after that. On the 5th day, Thomas Sullivan made me an offer that changed my entire life forever. He offered to buy 200 pieces of bread and pastries from me every single day at wholesale prices. I would make $1,000 per week, guaranteed, every single week. It was the miracle I had been praying for every single night on my knees beside my bed. With that guaranteed income, I could rent a real commercial space. I could buy professional equipment. I could actually become a legitimate business instead of just a desperate widow selling bread on a street corner. I rented a tiny storefront on Bleecker Street in Manhattan, 400 square feet of space that smelled like mildew and had water stains on the ceiling. I bought a used commercial oven from a restaurant that had gone bankrupt, paying for it on an installment plan that took me 2 full years to finish paying off. Anderson's Bakery, that's what I named it, painting the sign myself in blue and gold letters. Named after William, so that my son would always remember his father and where he came from and what we had built together, even though William never got to see it. David grew up in that bakery, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and yeast and butter every single morning. He did his homework on a little wooden table next to the oven while I worked 16 and sometimes 18-hour days, 7 days a week. No breaks, no vacations, no days off ever. By the time he was 15 years old, he could make perfect French baguettes with his eyes closed. By 18, he was managing all the bookkeeping and inventory and supplier negotiations. He was brilliant, my son, sharp as a knife and quick with numbers. He got accepted to New York University on a partial scholarship to study business administration. I paid for the rest with money I had been saving for years. While David was in college learning business theory, I was opening our 2nd bakery location in Brooklyn Heights, then our 3rd in Astoria, then our 4th in the West Village. By the time David turned 30 years old and graduated with his master's degree in business administration, we had 11 bakeries spread across all 5 boroughs of New York City. 11 successful, profitable locations, from Queens to Manhattan to Brooklyn to the Bronx to Staten Island. We employed 87 people, most of them single mothers, just like I had been, women who needed good jobs with fair pay and health insurance and respect. I paid them $15 an hour when minimum wage was still $7.25. I gave them full health insurance coverage, dental and vision included. I gave them 2 weeks paid vacation and sick days and personal days. I gave them Christmas bonuses equal to 2 weeks' salary. Some of those women cried actual tears when I handed them their first insurance cards because nobody had ever given them real benefits before. I understood those tears better than anyone in the world possibly could. It was September of 2019 when Veronica first appeared in our lives, sweeping in dramatically. I remember the exact date because we had just opened bakery number 12 in the West Village, our biggest and most ambitious location yet. It was a Saturday evening, warm and perfect, with a golden sunset painting the sky orange and pink. The grand opening party was in full swing, with over 100 guests enjoying free pastries and champagne. David arrived fashionably late with a woman on his arm, and the moment I saw her, something cold twisted in my stomach. A warning I should have heeded. She was tall, at least 5'9", probably 5'11" in the designer heels she wore. Thin as a runway model, with that slightly hungry, slightly desperate look that fashion magazines call elegant. She wore a white Chanel dress with a black leather belt that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She had that specific type of artificial beauty you see on television and in glossy magazines. A nose job, definitely. Probably done in the past 3 years based on how natural it looked. Lips filled with some kind of filler or collagen. Cheekbones that looked surgically enhanced. "Mom," David said with a tone in his voice I had never heard before. A mixture of pride and nervousness and something else I couldn't quite identify. I want you to meet someone very special. This is Veronica Martinez, my girlfriend." The way he said, "my girlfriend," as though he had won first prize at the lottery, as though he had finally accomplished something that all my bakeries and all my money couldn't give him. Status, sophistication, a beautiful woman on his arm who made other men turn and stare with envy. Veronica smiled at me with perfectly white veneered teeth and pulled me into a long, theatrical hug. She held me for exactly 5 seconds too long, making it feel performative rather than genuine. As she hugged me, she leaned close to my ear and whispered in a breathy voice, "What an absolutely inspiring story. Mrs. Anderson, from street vendor to all of this success, you must be so incredibly proud of yourself. Street vendor, not businesswoman, not entrepreneur, not self-made success story. Street vendor." That's what she thought of me. That's what she saw when she looked at me. But I smiled warmly, graciously, kindly. Of course I smiled. My son was clearly in love with this woman, and I wanted nothing more in the entire world than for David to be happy. So I welcomed Veronica into our family with completely open arms and an open heart, even though that small cold feeling in my stomach never quite went away. Before we continue this story, I want to ask you something. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, if this story is resonating with you in any way, please subscribe to Letters to Helen and hit that notification bell. Every single day we share real stories from real people who need their voices to be heard. And please, tell me in the comments section, have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely with your whole heart? Share your story with us. You're not alone. Let's continue. They got married exactly 6 months later in a beautiful old church in Manhattan. The wedding dress alone cost $28,000, imported from Italy with hand-sewn pearls and imported French lace. The total cost of the wedding was $185,000. I wrote checks for every single expense without blinking. The flowers were shipped from Amsterdam. The dinner was a 7-course gourmet meal. The wine was French, expensive vintages. The cake was 5 tiers tall and cost $6,000. From Veronica's side of the church, only 20 people came to the wedding. "My family is very small. Mrs. Anderson," she explained with tears in her eyes. "I'm practically an orphan, just like you became a widow so tragically young. I lost my parents when I was just 14 years old." She always found ways to compare herself to me, to connect her story to mine, to make me feel like we understood each other's pain and loss. As a wedding present, I gave them a townhouse in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. The down payment was $2 million, which I paid in cash. The monthly mortgage payment was $12,000, which I agreed to pay for the first 5 years. I also gave both of them important executive positions in my bakery company. David became general manager with a salary of $150,000 per year. Veronica became director of public relations and marketing with a salary of $90,000 per year, although I was never entirely clear on what public relations she was actually managing. The first 2 years of their marriage seemed fine on the surface. Veronica organized elaborate dinner parties at the townhouse, inviting her friends from the country club, women who talked about their Pilates instructors and their interior designers. I was always invited, but always seated farthest from Veronica, tucked in the corner almost as an afterthought. I watched as Veronica's personal history changed with each telling. Sometimes she was the daughter of diplomats who died in a plane crash. Other times her family had lost their fortune in the stock market. Once she claimed she turned down an international modeling career in Paris to marry David. But I noticed things that didn't add up. She never mentioned specific childhood details. No school names, no teacher memories, no childhood friends. She had no photographs from before age 25, claiming they were lost in a fire. Her accent occasionally slipped into something not quite American, something with Spanish influences that she quickly covered. And then there were the expenses. Designer handbags costing $6,000 appeared every week. Her closet looked like a department store. Trips to Miami for business that cost more than 5 employees earned annually. She renovated her office for $250,000, more than it cost to build an entire bakery. When I mentioned the expenses to David, he looked at me with disappointment and mild irritation. "Mom, we're not in Queens anymore. Veronica understands this world better than we do." In the 3rd year, things changed obviously. Veronica convinced David that his foolish mother needed to rest more. that I was working too hard for a woman my age. Your mother has worked so hard her entire life. She's earned her retirement years. We should take over so she can finally rest and enjoy life. Retirement. I was 64, in perfect health, still waking at 5 every morning. But suddenly I was an old woman who needed to step aside and fade away quietly. They started scheduling meetings without me. They changed suppliers without consulting me. They hired an expensive consultant who was Veronica's cousin, charging $15,000 monthly. And I, foolish Margaret, allowed it. I stepped back. Because every time I protested, David would say with exhaustion in his voice, "Mom, can't you just trust my wife?" By the 4th year, I had lost control of everything. Veronica took over all bank passwords for security. David signed contracts without reading them because Veronica already reviewed everything. Vendors I had worked with for decades were replaced. Then came the day that changed everything. A Thursday in March. I entered their townhouse without announcing myself. I heard Veronica's voice from upstairs. She was on the phone, that sweet, syrupy tone she used when plotting something. I stood in the hallway silently and listened to the most important conversation of my life. "No, Fernando, listen carefully," Veronica was saying with absolute confidence. "The old woman is perfect for the plan. Dr. Martinez already gave me the psychiatric evaluation forms. We just need 3 witnesses to confirm erratic behavior. I have the housekeeper and gardener. With one more, we can have her declared mentally incompetent and get David appointed as her legal guardian with full control." My heart stopped. I felt blood drain from my face. My legs went weak beneath me. I grabbed the staircase railing to keep from collapsing. "Don't worry about David," Veronica continued, laughing coldly. "David does whatever I tell him. He's so desperate not to be the bakery woman's son that he would do anything. The poor idiot doesn't realize that without Mommy's money, he's nobody at all. He's nothing." There was a pause, then that cruel laugh again, sharp and heartless. 6 months maximum, and we have everything. All 22 bakeries, all bank accounts, all properties. Everything transfers to David as her guardian. And when I divorce him next year, I take half. 11 bakeries, Fernando, each worth between 5 and 10 million. We're talking $60 million total once everything is sold. 60 million. That's what my life's work was worth to her. That's what she planned to steal from me and my son. "The truck is perfect," Veronica explained with satisfaction. "I convinced David his mother wants to buy him something extravagant for his 40th birthday. A $300,000 Mercedes G-Wagon. When she actually spends that much in front of 200 witnesses, we'll have perfect proof she's losing touch with reality. Who in their right mind spends $300,000 on a birthday present? It's exactly the kind of senile behavior we need documented." I stood up slowly, using the wall for support. Every muscle trembled, but not from fear, from pure rage, from that ice-cold fury you feel when you finally see clearly, when all the pieces click into place and you understand exactly what's been happening. I left silently, drove to my private apartment they didn't know about, and poured a whiskey, then another. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat surrounded by David's photographs, searching for the moment I lost him to her manipulation. The next morning, I made 3 decisions that would change everything. First, I visited my attorney, Michael Chen. "I need copies of everything, every deed, every document." He asked if there was a problem. "Just being cautious, Michael. Very, very cautious." Second, I hired a private investigator named Robert Stone, ex-FBI agent specializing in fraud. I gave him $20,000 in cash. "I want to know everything about Veronica Martinez. Everything. Where she came from, who she really is, what she's really done." Third, and hardest, I started acting. If they wanted a senile old woman, I would give them exactly that. I would become the best actress in New York. I started slowly, forgetting employee names, getting confused about dates. Once I showed up to a board meeting wearing bedroom slippers. I could see in Dr. Martinez's eyes what he was thinking when he evaluated me weeks later. Another foolish mother who couldn't accept her son growing up, who needed to be managed and controlled for her own good. I saw satisfaction flash in Veronica's eyes every time I made a mistake. I saw her squeeze David's hand as if to say, "See, I told you so. Your mother is losing it just like I said." Meanwhile, Robert worked in shadows. After 2 weeks, he called. "Mrs. Anderson, Veronica Martinez doesn't exist before 2015. No birth certificate, no school records, no credit history. She appeared out of thin air at 25. 1 week later, there was a Veronica Martinez with same birthday and hometown. But she died in a bus accident in New Mexico in 2014. Someone stole a dead woman's identity. 1 month later came the bomb. Your daughter-in-law's real name is Patricia Delgado, born in Caracas, Venezuela. She fled to the U.S. in 2014 after defrauding 3 families of over $2 million. She convinced them she was an oil heiress. She's wanted in Venezuela for fraud and embezzlement. I couldn't speak. This was worse than I imagined. But here's the best part, Robert continued with satisfaction. Patricia Delgado married Carlos Mendoza in Maracaibo, Venezuela in 2013. She never divorced him. Her marriage to your son is completely invalid. She's a bigamist. I had everything. Absolute proof Veronica was a fraud and criminal. I could destroy her immediately, but I didn't, because she had taught me that immediate revenge isn't as satisfying as slow, methodical destruction. So I kept playing the confused old woman, making mistakes, acting erratic. Veronica got so confident she got careless. She stopped being subtle. At one dinner, she served my food on a plastic child's plate. "It's safer, Mother Margaret. You've been dropping things lately. We wouldn't want you to break the good plates." Her friends nodded sympathetically, clearly agreeing that David had a foolish mother who couldn't even eat properly anymore without help and supervision. David said nothing. Another time she found me looking at photo albums and snatched them away. "Living in the past isn't healthy. You need to look forward." Then she threw them in the trash. Those were the only photos I had of William. I rescued them that night, crying tears of rage, not sadness. Then came the conversation about the truck. David approached me with Veronica on his arm. "Mom, my 40th birthday is coming up. I know you've always wanted to give me something really special. What would you like?" "Sweetheart?" Veronica stepped forward immediately. "We've seen a beautiful Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. It would be perfect." "How much?" $300,000, Veronica said, watching my face carefully for any reaction. "But you can afford that. He's your only son, your only child." I looked directly at her. For one moment, I let the senile mask drop completely. I looked at her like a hunter looks at trapped prey. "Of course, Veronica. I will give my son exactly what he deserves, exactly what he truly deserves." She smiled, interpreting my look as defeat. She had no idea the trap was about to snap shut around her neck. I bought the truck but also made other purchases. I hired a technical expert who installed hidden cameras in all 22 bakeries, my apartment, even disguised as buttons on my coat. Every conversation would be recorded, every lie documented. I hired 3 additional attorneys: estate law, corporate law, criminal prosecution. I opened new bank accounts under a private trust. I began quietly moving money to ensure I'd have resources if everything fell apart. And I continued acting while recording everything. Every cruel conversation, every forged signature, every phone call with Fernando, every piece of evidence building an unbreakable case. The plan to declare me incompetent moved forward exactly as Veronica had described. Dr. Martinez came to evaluate me. I later learned Veronica paid him $50,000 for the diagnosis she needed. "The patient presents early signs of dementia," he dictated coldly and clinically. $50,000 for that diagnosis. My cameras caught Veronica handing him cash after. All recorded, all time-stamped. After the doctor came manufactured incidents, Veronica started finding my medication in wrong places. She was planting false evidence. All recorded. Once at a dinner party, she served me boiling hot soup. When I reflexively spit it out, she made a theatrical show for guests. Mother Margaret can't control her reflexes anymore. It's part of her condition. All documented. She gave me pills one afternoon, claiming they were for a headache. They were powerful sedatives that made me dizzy. She had invited 3 friends to witness me stumbling. Robert found records of Veronica paying each witness $2,000. But the worst was forging my signature on a check. $800,000 to her fake charity. When I confronted the bank, Veronica had prepared perfectly for months. "Mrs. Anderson, perhaps you should give your son power of attorney to protect yourself from these mistakes." David was there, watching me with pity and embarrassment. "Mom, we just want to help you. We just want to make sure you're protected and safe." Do you know what it feels like when your son looks at you as a problem to manage rather than a person to respect? It feels like dying slowly from the inside out. But I didn't show that pain. I played my role perfectly while documenting every lie, every manipulation, every crime. That night, I cried. But between tears and whiskey, something crystallized inside me. Something cold and unbreakable. I was done being the victim. Time to destroy Veronica completely, legally, publicly, and permanently. I called Robert. Find Veronica's husband, her real husband, Carlos Mendoza from Venezuela. Tell him his wife, who never divorced him, is committing bigamy and fraud. Tell him I'll pay all expenses if he helps expose her. Robert said, "Consider it done. Mrs. Anderson, give me 3 weeks." I also called the real Veronica Martinez's family in New Mexico. I spoke to her mother, Rosa, a woman who lost her daughter 11 years ago. "Mrs. Martinez, someone is using your daughter's identity to commit crimes. I can help you get justice. Will you help me?" Rosa started crying. "My daughter was a good person. She didn't deserve her name stolen for evil." "Yes, I'll help you. Whatever you need." I made arrangements for Rosa and Carlos to fly to New York. I contacted FBI agent Harrison Collins, specializing in identity theft. I gave him everything. Every recording, every forged document, every fraudulent check, everything. I want her arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. "Mrs. Anderson, this is one of the most thoroughly documented fraud cases I've ever seen in my 30-year career," Agent Harrison said with genuine admiration. "She's looking at serious federal prison time." I looked him directly in the eyes. "They'll stick. Every piece of evidence is real, documented, time-stamped, and ironclad." David's 40th birthday was 2 weeks away. Veronica planned what she thought was her ultimate victory. Ritz-Carlton ballroom, 200 guests, 50,000 in flowers, 12-piece mariachi band, 7-course dinner, open bar, ice sculptures. She spared no expense because she thought she was spending my money for the last time. What she didn't know was I had rented the ballroom for an extra hour after. Half the guests weren't her friends, but FBI agents in formal wear. Every word would be recorded on 6 hidden cameras. Carlos Mendoza, Rosa Martinez, and Agent Harrison were waiting in a private room, ready for their entrances at precisely the right moment. The night arrived. I spent 3 hours getting ready. Hair done perfectly, professional makeup, my navy blue Chanel dress and pearl necklace William gave me 40 years ago. I looked at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked strong, powerful, dangerous, ready for battle. Tonight, 200 people would see me as the foolish mother Veronica had painted me to be, and I was going to let them. One last time. When I arrived, the ballroom was full of guests drinking champagne. The Mercedes G-Wagon sat center under spotlights, that ridiculous red bow on top, looking exactly like the bait it was. David stood near it, looking uncomfortable in his $5,000 tuxedo. Veronica worked the room in her $15,000 golden dress, all paid with my money while she plotted to steal everything. "Mom," David said, hugging me, "you look beautiful. Thank you for everything." For one moment, I saw my little boy, the child who hugged my legs, the boy who helped me sell bread. My heart broke, but I couldn't show weakness. Not tonight. Dinner was served. 7 courses I couldn't taste because my heart pounded. Lobster bisque, truffle risotto, filet mignon, wine worth $300 per bottle. Speeches were given praising David's success while never mentioning where that success came from or who had built the foundation. Then came the gift presentation. Veronica took the microphone. The room fell silent. This was her moment, her triumph, her proof that I was senile. She raised her champagne glass high. "I want to make a special toast," she announced confidently, "to someone very special. Someone who has always shown her love the only way she knows how, through money, through extravagant gestures, through trying to buy what can't be purchased." Every eye turned to me. I felt the cruelty coming, building with each word. "So I raise my glass," Veronica continued, her smile growing wider, sharper, "to the foolish mother who tries to buy love like day-old bread." Laughter exploded, detonating across the room. Some covered their mouths, some looked away, but most laughed openly, cruelly. David's face turned red. He looked down, but he didn't defend me. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. Every eye locked onto me. The laughter died as people realized something unexpected was happening. I walked calmly to the stage, took off my heels, left them there, started walking toward the exit. But I stopped. At the edge of the spotlight, I turned around, walked back to where Veronica stood confused. I took the microphone from her hand. "You're absolutely right, Veronica," I said clearly. "I am foolish. I was foolish to trust without investigating. Foolish to welcome someone without verification. Foolish to believe kindness would be returned instead of betrayal. But what everyone here is about to see will prove I'm not foolish enough to let you win." I pulled out my phone, pressed send. On the massive screens, a video started playing. Veronica going through my purse while I slept, taking cash and cards. Her voice crystal clear. "Stupid old woman doesn't notice when I steal from her." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Turn that off!" Veronica screamed. "It's fake! It's edited!" But videos kept playing. Veronica forging my signature. Veronica at the bank claiming I had dementia. Veronica paying Dr. Martinez $50,000 in cash. Veronica paying 3 witnesses $2,000 each. Veronica discussing the plan with Fernando. David stood frozen, his world crumbling in real time before 200 witnesses. "Wait," I said. "There's more." The next video played. Yesterday's call. "The baby isn't David's, Fernando. It's yours, but David is too stupid to ask for a paternity test." Collective gasp. David choked. "Baby? Veronica, what baby?" Veronica looked trapped, cornered. She couldn't deny the videos, couldn't deny her voice. Her carefully constructed house of lies was collapsing, and 200 witnesses watched every second. "But wait, there's still more," I said calmly. "I'd like to introduce special guests." The doors opened. Carlos Mendoza walked in. "Hello, Patricia. Or should I call you Veronica? I've been searching for you 5 years. Legally, you're still married to me. We never divorced." Veronica looked ready to faint. "No, this can't be." Then Rosa Martinez entered, elderly with tears streaming. "My daughter, Veronica Martinez, died 11 years ago. You stole her identity. You stole her name. How dare you dishonor her memory?" Finally, FBI agent Harrison Collins. "Patricia Delgado, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, forgery, embezzlement, and bigamy. You have the right to remain silent." Patricia fell to her knees, her golden dress crumpling, her makeup running, the mask finally completely fallen. "Margaret," she gasped, reaching toward me. "Please, think about David." I crouched to her level. "I did think about David. That's exactly why I did this, to save him from you. To save him from a con artist who was going to use him and destroy him." The FBI lifted her and handcuffed her. Before they led her away, I leaned close. "The Mercedes was never a gift. It was bait that made you overconfident. 300,000 to trap a criminal. Best investment of my life." They let her out. The ballroom remained in shocked silence. David stood motionless. "Mom, all of this. You planned all of this?" "No, David. I didn't plan this. Veronica planned to steal everything. She planned to have me locked away. She planned to divorce you after taking half. I just defended myself and protected what was ours." He collapsed into a chair. Guests started leaving uncomfortably. Within 20 minutes, the room was empty except David, me, Michael Chen, and Robert Stone. "Mr. Anderson," Michael said gently, "your marriage is legally null and void. She was already married. You were never actually married. All property can be claimed solely by you. She has no legal right to anything." "And the baby?" David's voice cracked completely, breaking him. "According to recordings, she's pregnant with Fernando's child. Not yours. I'm so sorry." My son broke. He cried like he hadn't since he was 8. I started to move toward him, but he held up his hand. "Don't. You lied too. You made me think you were going senile. I protected myself when I tried to warn you. You yelled at me. You chose her over me because she convinced me." "Exactly. She convinced you so easily because you wanted to be convinced. You wanted to be more than the baker's son. She gave you that illusion, but it was always built on lies." He stood and walked to the exit. "Where are you going?" "Home, to get very drunk." "No, you're going home, yes, you're going to sleep. And tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., you're coming to the bakery like when you were 15, and we're going to start fixing this together." He stopped. "Together? I didn't do all this to lose you. I did it to save you. We can rebuild, but it takes time and honesty. No more lies from either of us." He nodded without turning and walked out. I didn't know if he'd show up tomorrow, but for the first time in 5 years, I could breathe. That was 6 months ago. Patricia Delgado was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. It would have been more, but her pregnancy gave leniency. Fernando fled to Colombia. I didn't pursue him. Not worth the effort. The real Veronica Martinez's family held a memorial service with my financial support to honor their daughter's true memory. David did show up the next morning at 7 a.m., eyes red and swollen. He looked aged 10 years overnight, but he showed up, and he's shown up every morning since. He works harder than ever, coming in at 5 a.m. like I taught him as a teenager. He's rebuilding relationships with employees, learning the business from the ground up with flour on his hands and dough under his fingernails. We have dinner every Sunday night at Giuseppe's in Brooklyn. Just the two of us. We talk about everything now. About his father, about his childhood, about his marriage to Patricia and all the red flags, about my 5-year investigation, about trust and how hard it is to rebuild. Is our relationship healed? No, not completely. There are still awkward silences, still avoided conversations, still wounds needing time. But we're getting there, slowly, carefully, honestly, one day at a time. I'm 67 years old now. I wake every morning at 5 like I have for 40 years. I knead dough with these hands that have seen so much work, struggle, life. And sometimes, when the bakery is quiet in those early morning hours, surrounded by the smell of rising bread, I think about that night at the Ritz-Carlton, about how 200 people laughed when Veronica called me a foolish mother. Maybe I am foolish. Maybe I did try to buy love for too many years, thinking if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, my son would never leave me. But I learned something crucial through this betrayal. You can't buy love. You absolutely cannot purchase genuine love. But you can buy protection. You can buy justice. You can buy the truth when liars try to bury it. You can buy the time and resources to fight back against people who think you're weak. And sometimes, just sometimes, being foolish enough to fight for your child even when they've turned against you. Being foolish enough to spend 5 years planning instead of giving up. Being foolish enough to believe love can survive even the deepest betrayal. Sometimes that kind of foolishness is actually wisdom wearing a disguise. Yes, maybe I am still that foolish mother they laughed at 6 months ago, but I'm a foolish mother who saved her son from a predator who would have destroyed his life completely. My name is Margaret Louise Anderson. I'm 67 years old. I own 22 bakeries across New York and New Jersey, generating $30 million annually. I raised a son alone after losing my husband at 27. I was conned by a professional criminal for 5 years. I let her humiliate me in front of 200 people. And then I destroyed her completely, legally, and permanently, using nothing but patience and documentation. And you know what? I would do it all again. Every second of pain, every moment of pretending, every tear cried alone, every bit of it. Because at the end, my son is free. He's learning to be himself again. He's rebuilding his life and understanding what really matters. That's not foolish. That's love. Real, complicated, painful, powerful, unconditional love. The kind that survives everything. The kind that doesn't give up. The kind a mother has for her child. No matter how old they get, no matter how far they stray, no matter how much they disappoint you. So if you're going through something similar, if someone is manipulating you or someone you love, if you feel invisible in your own home, remember this story. Remember that silence is not weakness. Planning and patience aren't cowardice. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is smile. Take off your shoes, walk away with dignity, and prepare your counterattack in silence. Because you are not foolish for loving. You're not foolish for giving. You're not foolish for believing the best in people. You're only foolish if you let manipulators win. And I promise you, with patience, with planning, with documentation, and that cold determination from being pushed too far, they won't win. You will. Thank you for listening to my story. If this helped you in any way, if it gave you strength or hope, please subscribe to Letters to Helen. Click that notification bell. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who feels powerless. Someone who thinks they can't fight back. Leave a comment telling me your story. You're not alone. And always remember, never underestimate a woman who has survived everything. Never underestimate a mother who will do anything to protect her child. We're stronger than we look. We're smarter than people think. And when we finally decide to fight back, we fight to win, always.